Edition of 23 ABC News at 6 as we are hosting debate night here inside our studios, connecting you with the candidates running for Kern County Sheriff. We're joined by both candidates in studio. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Of course, incumbent for the job, Kern County Sheriff Donny Youngblood, and challenger Justin Fleeman joining us in studio. We're going to get in just a moment to opening statements. We both will give you, each gentleman, a minute to address the voters of Kern County as why you're the best fit for the job. Before tonight's broadcast, we did do a coin flip for who will get to begin the opening remarks as well as receive the first question. And Mr. Fleeman, you did win that coin toss, so we want to begin with you. Give you 1 minute to speak to the voters, and then we'll begin our question and our debate.
Okay. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for over 20 years. I have worked, supervised, or managed in every bureau. I also have experience in the Coroner's Office and the Public Administrator's Office. Those are two of the other Sheriff's elected positions. I actually have worked there coming up through the ranks, and as a Chief Deputy, being involved in the budget, also involved with my troops and engaged, I know what's going on within the organization right now because I'm working with the line staff. So looking over the past several years, there's obviously the county has been underserved in several areas through substations, staffing, and we need some new blood in there to get over and make things change and actually provide the good quality service that the Sheriff's Office is known for.
All right, Mr. Fleeman, thank you for that. And now we'll turn things over to incumbent Sheriff Donny Youngblood. You have now a minute to address the voters.
Thanks, Tim. And first of all, thank you for tuning in and watching this. It shows how important it is to you, and that means a great deal to me as your sheriff. You know, everyone out there knows where I'm at, what my issues are, but really it boils down to we've been the most severe fiscal emergency we've ever seen in our county, and we have to resolve that issue, and we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel. But I based my whole campaign on Second Amendment rights, the people's right to keep and bear arms. I think that's extremely important. I've also taken a stand against sanctuary status for people who are in our country committing crimes, and those are my really two issues that I think that the public wants to talk about, or the three issues.
All right, and you did hit on one that we're going to get to right now, which is the budget crisis and as well as department morale. I want to direct this first question to you, Mr. Fleeman. Department morale, it's no secret that you have made some statements to say it's low and could be improved upon. What would you do as candidate as Kern County Sheriff to improve morale and also keep deputies here in Kern County? We've seen reports of deputies getting trained here and leaving. How would you address those issues as well as the budget crisis?
I would actually get into the field with the deputies, and not only just the deputies, with all of the staff, because we have lost over 300 deputy sheriffs over the last 6 years, 100 detention deputies, as well as 100 support staff. So this isn't just a deputy issue, this is a department issue. So work with the staff to find out what is working, what is not working, get some of those fresh ideas and see what we could do to serve. And we are under a tight fiscal budget. However, finances does not increase morale. Actually being engaged, leadership is what increases morale. So that would be the approach that I'd take. Plus, I'd work with the supervisors and the other outlying county agencies as well as our own county agencies. We have resources. One is the helicopter, the Huey, which I brought up, but so does the fire. We need to work with our partners. Probation has canines. The Sheriff's Office has canines. Whenever we need dogs, we need to work with our partners out there to basically make that dollar go further. Also, a lot of our employees are Kern County born and raised like I am. So we don't want to leave and go anyplace else. We want to stay right here. And when you come to work for a law enforcement agency, it's about pride. I'm proud to wear the Sheriff's Office uniform. I don't want to wear another uniform. These deputies feel the same way. They just want a leader that's going to go out there and fight with them.
All right, thank you, Deputy Chief Fleeman, for that. We will turn things over. The same question to you, Mr. Youngblood. Department morale, the budget, how you keep deputies here, and how you move this department forward.
No question that we've lost personnel to other agencies. It's not 300. The number that he threw out is also retirees, and so when you lump that, it sounds much worse than it is. But there's no mistake that they're underpaid. They haven't had a raise in 9 years. They're frustrated. They're having to work forced overtime. But he talks about making the chiefs put on their uniforms and get out in the field. He's been a chief. Never seen him one time in a full uniform go out in a patrol car. I do know this, that the officers want to see their sheriff, their undersheriff, and their chiefs. I directed the chiefs about a year ago. You will spend 1 day a week in your units. You are my eyes and ears of the sheriff. We're 8,100 square miles. It would take me 4 months to go to every single unit and every shift to visit. So you can't, it's not feasible, and that's what they're supposed to do. but he has not done that. He talks of that game now, but he didn't do it when he was a chief. So those are issues that are real. The real to the officers. We have to take a look at where we're going. We have. I've talked to the board of supervisors. I've talked to the CAO. The raise is coming sooner than later. We know that. I'm going to get funding for academy after academy. We're on the upswing. And that's what really enthuses me, because for the last 6 years, it's been very difficult to be the sheriff under the financial restraints that I've been under. So I'm looking forward to where we're headed.
All right, and I want to give you, Mr. Fleeman, a chance to respond. He says the 300 number you mentioned of deputies leaving is not right. He just told you he's never seen you in a full uniform. How do you respond to that?
Well, that's not true. He has seen me in a full uniform, plus his 4 months that he's talking about to see every deputy. He's been the sheriff for 12 years. I mean, you know, do the math on that, about him going out. I've talked to him to try and have him come to Metro Patrol when I was in charge of Law Enforcement Bureau. Come see the deputies in the morning. I showed up early and I would see him. Said he just couldn't make it. So, you know, point the finger at me, but at the end of the day, he is the sheriff, he is the leader of this organization, and the men and women want to see him.
Mr. Youngblood, you have a chance to respond.
We've never had that conversation. You know, yeah, the chiefs have the absolute right to come in and make suggestions. He's come up with all kinds of things here in the last 4 months, all negative. Everything's been an attack. Now he wants to talk about the issues when there's 30 days left. The public deserves better than that. We should have been talking about the issues all along. And for him to say he's been in full uniform, I've never seen him in a gun belt, ever, since I've been the sheriff. So you can't just put on a uniform without a gun and be in full uniform.
All right, Mr. Youngblood, thank you for that response. It's already been a spirited debate here as we get started. Our next topic after we come back from break is going to be just that. We were talking about, Mr. Youngblood mentioning it, negative campaigning from both sides, how the candidates have been running their campaigns just about a month away from Election Day. We're going to bring back with the candidates for our special 23 ABC Debate Night coverage, connecting you with the candidates for Kern County Sheriff. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our special 23 ABC debate night, where we are connecting you with the candidates for Kern County Sheriff. We just had a spirited discussion here during our first break, and want to bring back to our next question, which will go to Kern County Sheriff Youngblood. We talked earlier, you alluded to, this campaign has gone negative. Both sides in the midst of making accusations. Mr. Fleeman, you've made accusations against Mr. Youngblood of covering up issues. Mr. Youngblood, you've called your challenger someone who is willing to tear down the department in order to get into the office. Do you think this campaign has gone too negative, and is there any chance of it coming back?
Well, certainly when you spend a part of your time talking about my sex life, the sex life of employees in the organization, it's gone too far. When you talk about and encourage a 12-year-old video to be played that is totally taken out of context, and to allow that your staff to do that, you bet it's gone too far. I've not said anything negative about Mr. Fleeman throughout this campaign. This campaign has been focused on why I think I should be the sheriff. But you can't do it for 4 or 5 straight months, and then at the end of the day say, because it blows up in your face, and it did blow up in his face, and now he wants to talk about the issues. So I'm not over it. I think that we're sheriff's candidates. I've lost 50 4x8 signs that people have torn down or graffitied and painted on it. Everyone out there has seen this. This is a sheriff's race. We should be bigger than this. This is about our top law enforcement officer in the county, and I'm going to maintain that high road.
All right, and Mr. Fleeman, I just want to give you a chance, before you answer the question, 30 seconds in response to this campaign.
You know, I've said, and I've lost signs as well. I've never blamed him or accused him of doing anything, and I wouldn't without any proof. He says that he's been clean and he hasn't done anything to affect me. He made a comment that he hadn't looked at my internal affairs case on 17 News, then turned around and gave the Bakersfield Californian a story that, based on what he's seen, he believes I committed a misdemeanor. So I'm not sure what it is with him. It kind of just seems like whatever time it is of the day, that's the road that he's going to go down and what makes things easier for him.
You do have a little more time. He did talk about just some accusations that you've made to him. Do you feel like this has gone negative? Do you feel like you bear some of that responsibility?
No, I do. It has gone negative. And as far as responsibility, this isn't a private company. This is taxpayer money. And the taxpayers need to know what's going on in their law enforcement agency. And he's right. We're the sheriff for Kern County. We are the voice for the people. But we answer to the taxpayers. We don't answer to politicians. We answer to the people that are going to go on June 5th and vote one of us sheriff.
Any response, sir?
You know, he's trying to deflect now, and you have to wear what your people do and what they say, and you can't at the end of the day back away from that. It represents you. My staff that works in my campaign know you take one sign down, you do something inappropriate, you're out of here, because I don't put up with that. And it's sad that we're here, but I'm going to maintain that high road.
And just to be fair, Mr. Fleeman, you do have 30 seconds to respond. He just said taking the high road.
I appreciate that. He says he's taken the high road and then accuses me or my campaign staff of actually doing something and taking his signs down. Bring the proof. We can all sit and talk about what's going on. I made allegations about things that were going on in the department, and during our prior debate, he admitted pretty much that they were going on. So let's actually stick with facts. Let's stop trying to deceive the public and let them know what's going on. And that's what I've done. And I don't have any issues for what I've brought forward. The public deserves to know what is going on. The taxpayers need to know that when they pay for a service, they're actually getting it.
All right. Mr. Fleeman, thank you for that. We are going to continue our coverage here with our 23 ABC debate night. The candidates for Kern County Sheriff, we're connecting you with them. So coming up next, we're going to talk about new laws proposed in Sacramento, how they affect use of force, and how deputies here at home need to be trained and equipped for those potential changes when our 23 ABC debate night coverage continues. And welcome back to our special 23 ABC coverage, connecting you here on Debate Night with the candidates for Kern County Sheriff. We want to direct our next question to Mr. Fleeman, Chief Deputy Fleeman. We talked before the break about new laws that could potentially in Sacramento change standards and response times for use of force. So in the midst of these changes, and if they do go into place, how do you train and equip deputies to respond and use lethal force?
Well, we use a force continuum. And we have in the past. We got away from that. And basically, it is an escalation of force. Nothing should change in the way that people use force or deputy, regardless if the law comes into place. You're going to use the right tool for the right situation. If somebody's over there and hands-on are appropriate, that's what you're going to use. If you're going to need to use a baton, you can use a baton. If you need to use a firearm, then you need to use a firearm. All that's going to be documented and justified by the officer utilizing that use of force and the investigators and the people that are surrounding it. So I don't really think there is truly a big change that's going to affect our law enforcement professionals. We do a good job, and I think they use good judgment and decision making whenever they're utilizing force.
All right, 90 seconds to you, Mr. Youngblood, just about the changing laws. If they do go into effect, how do you train and equip your deputies to respond?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with him because I think it can have a significant impact on our organization. If you look at the marijuana laws or look at the immigration laws, we have federal law, we have state law. We're bound to follow state law. Some of the liberal politicians in Sacramento are trying to establish a law that changes when an officer can use force and protect themselves. You know, there's a national standard, Graham v. Connor, and it's the totality of the circumstances and the reasonableness of what the officer sees at the time. It's not the next day looking back and spending 2 hours to see what the officer may or may not have done wrong, because it happens in 1/10 of 1 second. So I think we have to be really, really careful allowing the politicians in Sacramento to put our police officers in jeopardy, and that's what they're trying to do.
I want to give you a chance to respond, Mr. Fleeman. He talked about state law, perhaps alluding to the fact that you maybe don't know what the entire to this response to what Mr.
No,
said.
he's talking about liberal politicians as far as what's going to be there. We don't actually know what's there. We have used a force continuum, Graham versus Connor, an escalation of force. We went away from it. The way that I look at this is this will be bringing us right back to where we were at, and we can work with the politicians that are up there to try and make sure that it doesn't negatively affect us. Part of doing that would be the sheriff, to give your voice, to let them know the concerns that you have, and that's what the California State Sheriff's Association is for.
And Mr. Youngblood, he says he wants to work with people in Sacramento. Your response?
I don't think he knows that there's pending new laws out of Sacramento that are going to change what the officers face in the streets and when they may or may not use force. That's extremely important. That there's a national standard, that we don't have a standard in California that's different than the standard in Florida. And there's such big implications in those laws that come out of California that I think we need to pay attention.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, both. And as we mentioned, our discussion is going to continue here on our special 23 ABC coverage debate night. The candidates will each be given 1 minute after the break to tell you why they're the best candidate for Kern County Sheriff. Plus, after the 6 o'clock show, a special live stream edition of this debate where we'll continue the discussion. Stick with 23 ABC. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our special 23 ABC coverage here on Debate Night, where we're connecting you with the candidates for Kern County Sheriff. We want to begin with our closing statements. To you, Mr. Fleeman, you have a minute 30 to talk about why you should be voted for next Kern County Sheriff.
I think the biggest reason is 12 years ago, the sheriff made 3 promises. He said he was going to reunify the sheriff's office. That is a failure. He said he was going to attack gangs. We've hit a record number of homicides in 2016, 2017, and we're on pace to hit another record of homicides in 2018. He says he's going to hire more deputies and dispatchers. We have less dispatchers and now in deputies than we had in 1986. There's a reason that all of the sheriff's unions have got behind me and supported me to be sheriff. They're ready for a change. They're ready for a leader to stand tall, to work with them, to work with members of the community, and to actually make a difference in this county. If you look at our homicide rates, since he's been the sheriff, they're up over 100%. Vehicle theft up over 50%, and rapes up over 60%. This county deserves better, and I'm the person that's going to give it to them. And I will work hard to earn their trust, earn public trust from all of the communities, and I will make sure that I am present. I will not be an absentee leader. I will lead from the front, not from afar.
All right, Mr. Fleeman, Chief Deputy Fleeman, thank you for that. And we now turn it over to Sheriff Youngblood. You have 90 seconds to give your pitch to the voters as why you should be reelected.
Thanks, Tim. If you go back to the beginning, the 3 promises that he talked about, we did. We built a gang task force when I was first elected sheriff. I stood in front of the Board of Supervisors and asked for funding to build a gang task force to attack the gangs. And we built that up to almost 20 deputy sheriffs. And then we ran into a financial emergency that required us to start cutting deputy sheriffs, to start cutting positions to save money. Of course, the first thing that had to go was the gangs, because we had to have deputies on the streets. And we do have less deputies on the streets today than we probably have ever had. But there's only a certain amount of money that was available through this fiscal emergency. If you look at the other county departments, they've been hit as well. And I realize that I'm the sheriff, and I realize that it's my job to fight for those deputies, their raises, and for more personnel. And we've done that. I've met with the Board of Supervisors over and over and over again. He talks about partnering with other agencies. We partnered with mental health to where we now have a deputy in a car with a mental health worker. He talked about using probation's canines. Probation officers they're only peace officers when they're dealing with probationers. You start using their dogs on someone that's not a probationer, you're just a civilian with a dog, and that's going to cost us an awful lot of money. So he doesn't really have a grasp of the issues of being the sheriff. This is a huge county, and there's more than just answering to the unions. I answer to the public.
All right, Mr. Youngblood, thank you for that. And we just want to thank you both for joining us here for this debate night coverage. It's been a lively debate. We began and talked about morale in the department. We talked about budget issues. We've also covered issues within the negative campaigning that both candidates have made accusations toward one another. And we also talked about issues with use of force that could potentially change how deputies are able to respond and use lethal force here in Kern County. We do want to keep this discussion going. In just a few moments, we're going to begin a live discussion on our 23ABC social media platforms. That's our Facebook page, our website, as well as Roku and Apple TV. Will be live streaming where we continue this debate, our 23ABC special coverage, where we've been able to connect you, the voters, with our Kern County sheriffs. We're just about 30 days away, less than 30 days away from the June 5th primary. And we're going to bring you all the latest on this, the run for Kern County Sheriffs, in just a few moments. Gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining us here.
My pleasure.
And if folks want to flip over to 23ABC or turn to 23.com, as well as our Facebook page, we're going to have more on that in just a moment. But for now, for all of us here at the 23ABC studios, I'm Tim Callahan. Been an honor to serve as your moderator tonight. We're going to continue this discussion in just a few moments on live 23ABC social media platforms. For now, for all of us here at 23ABC, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in just a moment. And welcome back to our 23 ABC Debate Night coverage, where we're taking you inside and connecting you here with the Kern County candidates for Kern County Sheriff. We, of course, have incumbent Sheriff Donny Youngblood serving 12 years in the position, seeking his 4th term as Kern County Sheriff. And we have Chief Deputy Fleeman, Justin Fleeman, a challenger in this. We want to welcome our audiences on our social media platforms, Facebook, our website, Roku, and Apple TV. And gentlemen, where we left off, we were talking about morale within the department, budget issues. We talked about different laws in Sacramento that could potentially change use of force standards here at home and across the state. I want to get to one question we didn't have time for during our broadcast, is personnel issues. You both kind of hit on some issues that you've seen within the department. How would you address personnel issues that have contributed perhaps to a negative view within the community? This could be high-profile crashes, officer-involved shootings, and any issues that happen within the media and reach the community. How would you bridge that gap between the Sheriff's Office and the community of Kern?
Well, first of all, there's a process that we go through for every discipline, and that is 3 of the 4 chief deputies sit on a discipline review board. They go over all the information from the case. They then make a recommendation that is to the sheriff as to what they think the discipline should be. I actually don't make a decision there at that point. The discipline is imposed, and then the officer has a chance to come back with their attorney, with the sheriff, called a Skelly hearing, and then they can make their pitch. And I hear it firsthand from the officer and firsthand from the attorney why they think the discipline should not be what is the chief's recommended. Sometimes I follow that, and sometimes I don't. But when you have the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, you cannot talk about administrative cases. You can't say, hypothetically, and then talk about a real case that everyone in the department knows what case you're talking about. It's against the law to do that, and we've seen that in this campaign. And it's really frustrating because the officers in this department deserve better. If we don't like the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, we can change it. But the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, Government Code 3300, is there, and we should follow it.
Chief Deputy Fleeman, your chance to respond in a minute 30.
I appreciate that. About getting out to the community, that's how you build trust and transparency, not hiding behind the Peace Officer Bill of Rights. Peace Officer Bill of Rights do exist to protect law enforcement officers. However, you have to get out in the community and engage some of these activist groups that are out there, people in general. Let them know what's going on in the sheriff's office. Truly be transparent, not just like a politician and say the word and then have no follow-through. Go up and show out to these community groups, out to the different areas, meet with them, invite them back to the sheriff's office. Let them know that you're there to serve them, that you're there for the people. That's how you actually start building trust. Get your deputies and put them out there to show up to schools. Play basketball with kids for 15 minutes if they get a chance, or 10 if calls for service aren't too busy. At least let people look at us so they know that we live here, we represent them, and we are a critical piece to the community, and we want to work with them.
Mr. Youngblood, I want to give you 30 seconds to respond. Essentially, Mr. Fleeman, you're calling you a politician, not connecting with the department. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, if you don't think this position is political, you've really missed the boat. There is a political aspect to this job. But, you have to understand that you can go out and you can talk to the people, and you can do all of that, but you can't violate the Peace Officer Bill of Rights. Elections are designed to see if he's right, that I'm not in touch with the community. If I'm not, they're not going to reelect me. But I'm telling you right now, I truly believe that I'm still in touch with that community, and I think you'll see it on June 5th.
30 seconds for your response, sir.
I agree with him. I think you'll see it on June 5th as well. Part of campaigning has taken me to many areas of the county, some that have not seen him for years, just like our deputy sheriffs, some that have been employed in a good majority for at least 10 years that have only seen him one time when he pinned the badge on. We have employees in the office that have not seen him at all. So how do you get the message out there that you're a sheriff for the people and the direction that you want your folks to kind of work with the community if you're not engaged with them?
I want to get to our next question here, and it has to do with what we've been talking about at some points, use of force, deputy officer involved shootings. How do you think that the county has an issue with too many officer involved deputy shootings? What can be done perhaps curb this? It kind of plays off our last question about bridging that gap with the community. And this question goes to you, Mr. Fleeman.
Back to, like I said, I think bridging the gap is going to be the big thing. The sheriff or I can't sit and determine what's going to happen if there's going to be another officer involved shooting. That's going to be based on the situation that deputy responds to. So, to sit and see that, well, I can predict that there will be less shootings, that's not accurate. What we can do, though, is reach out to the community, bring them in, bring that public trust back. That way, when there is a critical incident that happens, they're there working with us. They're listening to what we're saying. They actually trust whenever we make a comment because we're out there in the community. That is the biggest issue that we've had in people I've talked to. And I've talked to people whose family has died at the hands of law enforcement. And the fact is it can be years later and they have not heard from our organization. And that is just sad, and that does not do anything for public trust or do anything to build relationships with the community.
90 seconds, sir. The same question to you.
Yeah, when you say that families haven't heard from law enforcement and their loved one died at the hands of law enforcement, you've made a value judgment there that's really, really sticky, and you should be really cautious making those type of statements. There's so much involved when there's an officer-involved shooting that you cannot communicate with that family. You have an attorney, and they have an attorney. And when you start trying to cross that to empathize with what they might be feeling, you're going to cost this county an awful lot of money. You follow your legal advice. That's why we have county counsel. That's why we have legal attorneys. No one wants to be involved in an officer-involved shooting. Not one deputy that I've ever known in my career. Whether there's too many or not, there's no answer to that. We were painted by the Guardian with a very negative picture that was totally inaccurate. But what we do is we bring the public in. We allow them to go through a Citizen Academy for 12 weeks. We invite the media to come over and go through our shooting simulator so that they can get a look at what we see in a fraction of a second, and you make the decision. And when you get killed in that simulator or you shoot the innocent person, I've watched it over and over. The news media will step back and say, oh my gosh, I didn't get it. And that's really what we want to do. And that's why we have that 12-week Citizen Academy, to let them get a feel and a touch for what we do.
All right, Mr. Fleeman, your response, 30 seconds. He's talking about how you may have been overstepping some of the legal boundaries in your response to officer-involved shootings and maybe out of touch with the process.
Now, when we're talking about, I'm talking about people that their loved ones have been passed for over 12 years, that the lawsuits are already done. That's what I'm talking about. And you can bring people in. There's certain things that you can't share with them, but there's other things that you can. And I've never met a deputy sheriff that was not proud of the report that they at least wrote, or a comment that they made based on a situation. And we do bring and work with some of the communities, not enough like we should. We should bring members of the public into that shooting simulator from some of these activist groups to let them look and see. That way they have a real life perspective, not just making a statement with no facts.
All right, and you get 30 seconds, sir, to respond just to what the discussion we've been having here.
Yeah, you know, we do invite the activist group. We had that committee, and it dwindled to we had one person that showed up. So we went back to the drawing board, and that's when staff came up with the idea to let's have a Citizen Academy, invite people to come in and spend 12 weeks with us, one night a week. And they're amazed by the time that 12 weeks is up. So we do that. We invite our staff twice a year to come into the sheriff's office and get free food, you get to mingle, you get to meet everybody while they're on duty. So if they haven't seen the sheriff in 10 years, it's as much their fault as it is mine.
I want to hit on something I think I hear both of you talking about, and perhaps you may find agreement on this, but it seems like you're both sort of frustrated with the way that Kern County has been painted in terms of nationally. You mentioned, Mr. Youngblood, the Guardian article. What, as a sheriff, and this question goes to you, Mr. Youngblood, what can you do to further repair Kern County's image with the country and the world, especially, as you mentioned, following that article from the Guardian?
Well, make no mistake about it. We are the last large conservative county in the state of California. The Guardian is not through with us. They're going to come back because they're after this conservative county. And what they did is they took a snapshot in time. And I think this is probably one topic that he and I would agree on. That snapshot in time fit their agenda. It didn't fit ours. And had they taken a different snapshot in time, we wouldn't have been in the top 30 or 40. So they came in, they did a hit piece. When they came in, they told us they were doing something different than what they did. And you know, I've been the sheriff for 12 years, and I've always worn it right on my sleeve. If you guys call, I stand up and I talk to you. The Guardian's the only media that I won't communicate with any longer, and because of I don't trust them.
Mr. Fleeman, the same question to you. In the midst of negative light sometimes to Kern County, the reporting from the Guardian, what would you do as sheriff to address some of those issues and deal with that negative coverage to maybe improve the image of the Kern County Sheriff's Department?
I think that goes back to working with the community. That is what our profession is. We're a service-based organization that is supposed to work with the community. We're supposed to be transparent. You know, I think one thing that has helped is obviously utilizing the district attorney's office to look and review our deadly force incidents. I think that's very helpful and starts walking down that street. But I think comments that have been made in the past, I think, make it really difficult. The sheriff has made a comment and it has been blasted throughout the community. I don't know how you repair that. And I can guarantee that every time a lawsuit comes up, they're going to be calling him for a witness, and it is going to cost the taxpayers of Kern County tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars.
And you mentioned the comment. Can you elaborate on that? You still have time, about 30 seconds.
The video that was released by the Detention Officers Association 12 years ago.
Okay, and Mr. Youngblood, you do have a chance to respond in 30 seconds. Mr. Fleeman's referring to that video that was, I believe, before you were elected sheriff, talking about financially, whether it's better to shoot or whether is it to injure someone. You've said those words were taken out of context. Your chance, though, to respond to his...
I've responded to this over and over again. That's not what I said. We were talking about a specific case. And I was impressing upon them that the person doesn't have to die to cost us a lot of money. Sometimes, if they live, it's more expensive. And it was taken totally out of context. I could have said it better. There's no question about it. But you're going back 12 years. I wasn't even in the organization then. They're not going to be calling me as a witness. This is something that he is trying to sell. It isn't going to happen.
Your response, sir?
As the sheriff, if he thinks that they're not going to call him as a witness, he's really out of touch, because I can guarantee you that during the time he's been the sheriff, there have been numerous lawsuits with his name on it.
Every lawsuit has my name on it in the department.
Of course, as being Kern County Sheriff. This next question to you, Mr. Fleeman. We talked about it during the broadcast earlier tonight, just about the negative campaigning. You can sense that there's no love lost between these two candidates standing before me here. This has been a bitter-fought campaign. The negative campaigning, do you think it's affected the voters? Do you think it's affected this race? And as we talked about earlier, is there a high ground that either candidate can take at this point?
Well, I think that there is. I think part of it is that you want the people to know what is going on within their organization. And I've said it once, I'll say it again. It's not his sheriff's office, it's not my sheriff's office, it's the people of Kern County. They're going to ultimately make a decision as far as what they believe is accurate. This is not a private business, and I want to make sure that people know that. This is not somebody that he has money and he's doing with it whatever he wants to. He's allowing to happen in his private business whatever he wants to. This is taxpayer money. These are issues and incidents that are happening while people are on duty. The public has a right to know. And I guarantee you, if you go talk to the people in Oildale, East Bakersfield, Roseman, Ridgecrest, anywhere in the county, and ask them, this is where your tax dollars are going. Are you happy with the service levels you're getting? They will say absolutely not.
90
seconds, sir, to respond. Just talking about negative campaigning, you also brought up some...
When we started this campaign, I stood in front of a camera when someone told me that he was going to run for sheriff, and I said, you know, that's our system. I ran against the sitting sheriff. I don't begrudge that. But we should keep this campaign on a clean level. We shouldn't attack each other. We're both police officers in the same agency. And the next thing I heard from more than one person was for his statement, I will burn this organization down if I have to. And now he wants to lead that organization. That doesn't equate with me, and I don't think it equates with members of that organization. I know it doesn't equate with the public that we serve.
30 seconds back to you, sir, making accusations. You want to burn down the department?
No, I love the sheriff's office. And if he loved the sheriff's office, he would actually be engaged and wouldn't be an absentee leader. You know, he can sit here and say that I'm doing this and that he's running this great, clean campaign. He said he told the news that I was in charge of the narcotics property room and the narcotics were stolen. That is so untrue, it's not even funny. I've never been interviewed regarding that investigation, but he's going to try and rest that on my shoulders. Then he also said that he hadn't looked at my case. But then he shows up and now he's given a statement as to he believes that I committed a misdemeanor. So you can't sit and say, I'm running a clean campaign, and then turn around and sit and say, oh, everything he's doing is bad and is negative.
All right, and 30 seconds to you, Mr. Youngblood.
Yeah, he's talking about a case that's still active. And so we'll wait and see how that plays out. You know, I've not made any accusations about him, but he stood in front of a bunch of deputies and said, I'm going to fire you, you, and you. He's gone through the organization and asked people to support him while he's working. He's been a bully with the employees. I've heard it over and over again. Well, you can't bully me. And I think the employees are just about fed up with the bullying, too.
All right, and on that note, where does the campaign go from here? Obviously, we're about less than 30 days away. Should voters expect more aggressive attacks from both sides? Will this campaign focus, which it has, on the issues, but what can voters expect to see within the next 30 days? Mr. Youngblood, this question to you.
You know, the voters can expect from me what they've seen for 12 years. I wear it right on my sleeve. I'm in communication with each board member. I'm working hard to fill those vacancies. I've been assured of back-to-back-to-back academies in the future so that we can get caught up. They understand where we're at and how we got here. So that light at the end of the tunnel really inspires me. And the deputies raise is coming sooner than later. I can't share that information with you, but I've been working on that with the CAO. The Ridgecrest Jail, I have every indication that by the first of the year, I'm going to be able to open that Ridgecrest Jail with new funding. Not with current funding, but with new funding. So I'm really enthused about where we're going in the next 6-8 months.
All right, 90 seconds to you, Mr. Fleeman, just where this campaign goes in the next 30 or so days.
I put my platform online for people to look at and get a good read over. I'm going to try and push the issues forward, but I want people to know what's going on and to make allegations about, well, I'm going to have back-to-back academies and we're going to open the Ridgecrest Jail. Where were you at before it became election time? Why haven't we prioritized the budget? We have a sheriff that has not been to a department budget meeting, which is a 3-month process, in years.
Totally not true.
So how is he going to say that he's fighting for the public? Well, his political career is online. There has never been a 4-term sheriff. He has told me and others that he's only going to stay 2 years and he was going to hand the office to somebody else.
Again, not true.
All right, we'll give you, how much time do we? You got 40 seconds, Mr. Fleeman, then we'll give Mr. Youngblood a chance to respond.
And he sits and says it's not true. It's true. I have not said one thing that has not been true, no matter what anybody says. And if it has, I ask him to prove it. But I guarantee you I can prove through transfer records and everything else that the comments he's making are not accurate at all. And he knows that. He knows that I've not been interviewed, unless he completely checked out off of the investigation where there was a theft of marijuana and other things.
All right, a lot there, but I want to give you 30 seconds.
Here's the way the budget process works. The sheriff outlines what his priorities are to the chiefs and the undersheriff. They take the information and they spend days and days and days working to get to a budget. They bring it back to me and ask me, are you good with this or do you need changes? I give them recommendations on where I want to go if they don't have it right. And then when we get a budget, every Monday morning we have a meeting. And part of that meeting is a budget meeting every week. I've been to over 50 or 60 of those in the last 18 months. He's been to maybe 5.
All right.
Because he hasn't been there.
And you have 30 seconds to respond?
The department budget meeting lasts about 3 months. He's the sheriff, over $200 million budget. He needs to be at every budget meeting instead of out in Sacramento or Washington, D.C. or whatever other training's going on. He is the person in charge of this organization. He needs to answer the people of Kern County. And if he can't do the job, then it's time to step aside.
All right, we're going to move on to next question. I want to unpack this a little bit because I've heard you guys talking about the budget issues. You, Mr. Fleeman, talked about the Ridgecrest Jail, that closing. You've attributed that to the purchase of a helicopter, a decision you said you wouldn't have done. What would you have done differently in that case, and what could be done differently to save the Ridgecrest Jail and to resolve some of the budget issues?
Well, the helicopter was purchased in 2008. It was $4.53 million, I believe, and the lease payment every year is $453,000. Plus you have to have staff, plus you have to have flight time to keep it running. The very next year, we laid out 40 detention deputies. I would like to think that we would be able to forecast a few months down the road before we lay people off. We also have the Turbo Commander. There's hangar fees, there's a car, there's a hangar fees for Sacramento whenever we're there. There's money that should be utilized to provide those public safety services that I've discussed earlier. The fire department has a Huey. Actually, they have 2 of them. That goes back to when I'm talking about sharing resources that the county has. We're in a fiscal crisis. There's no doubt about it. This didn't happen yesterday. We started cutting our budget around 2009. So to set and hang on to something whenever you didn't have the staff be in the Huey in 2013 to fly it full-time as a hoist rescue helicopter doesn't really make sense to me and most of the taxpayers that I talk to.
Same question to you.
Yeah, it might not make sense to him. I understand that. But you have to understand, tell Michael Booker, Deputy Michael Booker, that Huey wasn't worth its money when we saved his life in the manhunt when he got shot and would have died had we not had that Huey. Tell the people in Taft when we were able to put the SWAT team on the ground in 30 minutes when they had their school shooting. Tell the people in Ridgecrest that when we went out on 395 and they were chasing the suspect down 395 that Huey is not worth its weight in gold. He said we should sell the Huey and the Turbo Commander and hire staff. If you'd sold them both and hired 20 deputies, you would then put them through the academy, paying them as they go. At the end of 9 months, you'd hand them a set of keys. Your aircraft would be gone, your money would be gone, and so would the deputies because there's no funding to continue to pay them. You have to have ongoing funding. You have to have approval by the board. You can't sell your fixed assets, one-time money to pay salaries.
30 seconds to respond.
That's not true. There is funding going to those helicopters in that airplane every single year. It's a budgeted line item. First and foremost, Mike Booker was a senior deputy. He earned that title, and that's what he should be. He's also somebody who's sitting right now waiting for a retirement with the county and not receiving a paycheck. So we probably should be looking at the priorities of the people in the organization. And to say that the Huey actually stopped the manhunt, that was 2 deputies in the Ridgecrest area that stopped the manhunt. We need to work with the people of Kern County, utilize the resources, what's best for the people during this fiscal crisis.
30 seconds to respond, sir.
Well, I don't think I said that they stopped it. If I did, that's not what I meant to say, but I don't think that I said that.
To be fair, you said that it helped
tell the people of Taft.
Get him to medical aid.
They did, and they flew him out. They got him to a medevac, or he would have died. So it paid for itself. You can't foresee what's going to happen the next year. You could have never guessed in 8 years we would be where we're at 8 years ago financially in this county. No one could. So we've gone through this total rebuild, and now it's going to take us time to get back to where we were.
All right, I believe the next question goes to you, Mr. Youngblood. I want to talk about some issues that you've been very vocal about, but of course the next Kern County Sheriff will have to be involved in. Mr. Youngblood declared Kern County as a law and order county in a state that is now passing bills for sanctuary status.
Yeah.
What would you do differently, or perhaps do this same in terms of this county and your department's response to immigration sweeps, your response to enforcing federal law here in Kern County?
We don't do sweeps. We don't enforce federal law. Never have. That's a misconception that the public has. But what I have said, and I stood in front of the Board of Supervisors and asked them to vote to declare us a law and order county, not a sanctuary county. And they voted no. And then Senate Bill 54 came up 5 minutes later, and they voted not to support Senate Bill 54, which is the bill that makes us a sanctuary county. I don't believe that anyone should get sanctuary if they're committing crimes. And that's what we're talking about. Senate Bill 54, I argued against from the very beginning. I said there's going to be unintended consequences. Take a look at what happened in Delano. And we had 2 people lost their lives because of Senate Bill 54. And so I stand by it. I think the word sanctuary for criminals is an oxymoron.
Your stance, Mr. Fleeman, on the county's stance on the sanctuary status, would you take a similar approach to Kern County Sheriff Donny Youngblood?
It's similar when it comes to that. But for me, we're a sheriff's office to serve the people. And like he said, we have nothing to do with the federal law. And one thing he did say is that he went to make a law and order county, and actually Mark Nations from County Council said that he couldn't. So I want to be clear on that. The sheriff's office has nothing to do when it comes to immigration. Our job is to protect and serve every person that's here. And I think we agree on one thing, that we do not want criminals in our community victimizing our people.
30 seconds to you, Mr. Youngblood. He's talking about nations perhaps not agreeing with...
Yeah, I declared us a law and order county without county council, without the board of supervisors. And I think that our next step should be involving ourselves in the Orange County lawsuit, which is suing the state of California for providing the sanctuary status for people. I think that this has to come to a head. We can't continue not being able to communicate with our law enforcement partners. There's now a bill for us not to be able to talk to DEA on certain narcotic cases. This is absurd.
Mr. Fleeman, you do have 30 seconds to respond if you'd like.
Kind of like he said, the biggest thing about this bill is it's pushing ICE into the neighborhoods. And they don't fish at the jail. They were able to kind of fish with a hook, so to speak. Now they just fish with a net. It's going to cause issues. It already has caused issues. As he mentioned, the 2 people passing in Delano, they had 6 children between them. Somebody's going to have to take care of them. And that goes back to politicians not wanting to work with each other, not wanting to communicate and deal with the issues that are there.
Sounds like there's a little bit of agreement from both sides on this. I want to switch to our final question. Mr. Fleeman, you will take this. It's about marijuana, the future of that. Obviously, the Kern County Board of Supervisors voting to not regulate marijuana in Kern County. What's the Sheriff's Department's, should be the Sheriff's Department's stance on this? Should we be enforcing federal law or enforcing state law when it comes to the marijuana issue?
We can't enforce federal law. I mean, as he mentioned before. Me personally, I don't agree with recreational use of marijuana, never had. It's a little different for me watching my father pass away 2 years ago from pancreatic cancer, and that's what his doctor had recommended for him. And I watched kind of how it helped him deal with the pain and the heartache versus using, morphine patches and other drugs that were harder on him. So, the voters made a decision. Regardless if I agree with it or not, that's what we have to do. We have to follow and support the laws that are on the books. Even I, as a Republican, do not agree with them.
All right, and Mr. Youngblood, you have 90 seconds for this, the future of marijuana in Kern County and what the role of the Sheriff's Department will be.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what I think personally. It's what the law says. I am very concerned 20 years, 25 years down the road of what our young people are going to be like. We all grew up with people that were chronic users of marijuana, and very few turned out to be very successful, at least from my era. So that is very concerning to me, but the law is what it is, and we don't enforce federal law. And what people do in their homes, in the sheriff's office, I think he would agree, we couldn't care less if it's a marijuana issue, as long as it's not organized crime. And there is a lot of organized crime involved in this marijuana issue.
All right. Well, would you like 30 seconds to respond? You guys are both agreeing on this?
Well, I think that he misspoke, and not intentionally. We did actually do a policy to make sure that our employees are not using marijuana when they work for the sheriff's office. That is a county rule, and he did send a memo out regarding that.
We've had that, and with any other drug, because we don't want the officer coming to your house with a gun and a badge and being under the influence, and we've had it happen.
All right. Well, on that note, I want to talk and just give you guys the same format. When we were on air on 23ABC, we gave you guys both 1 minute to give your final pitch to the voters. And Mr. Youngblood, I want to begin with you. Your pitch is why you should be reelected to now a 4th term as Kern County Sheriff.
Well, we've struggled through a financial time like we've never seen before. And we have held our department, our office together during that period. We ran out of people to replace people. We didn't have enough people to provide 24 hours in all of our substations. I tasked the chiefs, one of which was Mr. Fleeman, to give me the best plan that we could have to address this with the personnel that we had, and that's the plan that we're on today. So it's disconcerting to see him be critical of the administration when he's part of it. He shined a light on them and almost blinded himself.
Chief Deputy Fleeman, a minute for you, your closing remarks to the voters.
At the end of the day, the sheriff makes the decisions for our department. We do have electronic monitoring program deputies that could be pushed out into the street. Those are the deputies that monitor the ankle bracelets. They would actually be working in the communities where they have a caseload and supervise people. It would cut down on response times, and it would provide for better service levels. Those are some of the things that he as a sheriff should be able to see and should be able to do. But I know he'll never take responsibility for his action or involvement within the organization. It's always going to be the undersheriff or chief deputy. At the end of the day, let's take some responsibility. Let's move the county forward. Elect a new sheriff.
All right. So on that note, thank you both for being here. Incumbent Sheriff Donny Youngblood, Chief Deputy Justin Fleeman. Thank you so much for being here with us as we wrap out our 23ABC coverage here. Debate night at 23ABC, connecting you with the next Kern County Sheriff. That election, of course, coming up on June 5th. After this live stream ends, you'll be able to go back and watch this in its entirety. For all of us here at 23ABC, we thank you for watching this special coverage, Debate Night 2018. We'll have another debate coming up in a week for Kern County Sheriff. We'll have both candidates here in studio. Until then, I'm Tim
District Attorney.
I'm sorry,
said
what did
sheriff.
It's been a long day.
I'm not coming back.
For District Attorney. You are not coming back for a second time. For District Attorney,
Maybe.
We'll see you a week from Monday with both candidates joining us here in studio. For now, for all of us, I'm Tim Callahan. Thanks for being with us.